Metaphor ReFantazio is shaping up to be the JRPG of the year. But there is a big problem that might affect its sales performance. The issue lies with a game that just released this week. Actually, I should say Atlus Rerelease, a game that came out in 2021. Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance is the latest installment in the Megaten franchise. While I fancy the vanilla version of SMT5 as it did refine the formula of SMT games, but did we really need a re-release of a 3-year-old game? Instead of just, porting it outside Nintendo Switch? Which is a question that can also be asked for past Atlus games, especially for the Persona series. I mean, it sounds like I'm complaining, but I'm actually glad that we get to have another SMT game. And this time, people without a Switch can now play it. But again, this Atlus re-release is the reason why people are so hesitant to buy their new games. This is the big problem with Atlus re-releasing games. But why do they keep doing it? Before that though, if you like Megaten and Persona series, then like this video and join Atako to find for more JRPG content. Money. That is the most obvious reason why Atlus insists on re-releasing games. The new version always outsells the old. Like, take a look at this number on the Persona series. Persona 3 sold 290,000 copies, while Persona 3 FES outsold it with 327,000 copies. Persona 4 on the PS2 sold around 558,000 copies, but Persona 4 Golden sold almost 4 times that number with 1,940,000 copies. And you might be thinking, well, of course P4G will sold more copies. I mean, it came out on all active platforms like Steam, PS4, you name it. But that number is actually for the PS Vita alone. Persona 4 Golden was the reason why PS Vita hung on by a thread for years. Of course, the other platforms sold 2,223,000 copies combined. So it's a no-brainer. If re-releasing a game makes more money than just releasing it once, then you bet they'll do it over and over again. I mean, if I had that kind of golden goose, then I would let it keep laying eggs. So why do these re-release versions keep on selling more units? Well, because of the new content that it provides. But that is also the big problem about this whole shebang with Atlus re-releases. How much new content is there for this re-release to be considered an actual new product? And, not just a scam. Like, imagine buying Jordans last year, then you buy one again because it re-released on a different shade. Wait, people actually do that? We consumers are stupid. I just want to get it out of the way. SMT5 Vengeance, while yes, it is a re-release of a 3-year-old game, but its additional content will net you around 80 plus hours, including a new campaign. So it is justifiable for SMT5 Vengeance to be a new game on itself. And now, you even have yourself a bonus paperweight if you bought the original SMT5 for Nintendo Switch. But how about those other definitive versions of the game? Persona 3 FES came out 1 year after the original. Now, the biggest difference between the two is that FES has an epilogue called The Answer. Additionally, it also had some other things like new side quests, more personas, costumes, and some tweaks on the battle system. So was it really justified for a re-release? I mean, it added an option to romance a toaster, so of course it does, especially for that time. But if it came out today, people would be mixed whether or not a re-release is warranted. I mean, people are already mad at the expansion pass for Persona 3 Reload. So just imagine if they re-release that game as Persona 3 Reload Shoot Yourself Again for $70, now with the epilogue. Still no FMC though, because that is for the re-release on Nintendo Switch 2. Then what about Persona 4 turning into Persona 4 Golden? Well, it's very similar to the changes for P3 and FES, adding new characters, social links, personas, dungeons, bosses, and other QOL updates. My favorite new flavor here are the additional events such as the ski trip and scooter riding, providing us with one of the most funny moments in Persona 4. Now, it does sound like these are minor changes, but P4G had to be re-released considering that Atlus was moving assets from PS2 to PS Vita. They actually had to remake Persona 4 to fit the PS Vita system and replace the old engine, renderware, with their own. Persona 5 and its definitive version, Persona 5 Royal, is also similar to the changes with the other re-released Persona games, changing some combat aspects like the bullets now reloading after a battle, like thank god, new features for exploring mementos like the grappling hook being spoiled by Smash, redesigning dungeons, puzzles, areas, and other mechanics. Adding 2 beloved characters is the best one so far, and of course the third semester story, which is absolutely awesome. While those changes are great, a lot of fans are saying that this can be just added as a DLC or as an expansion pass instead of re-releasing it as a new game, which I don't totally agree with considering the changes that they had to make. But if we're talking about the third semester only, then I can see it as an expansion pass. But then again, they had to move Persona 5 from PS3 to fit in with the updated graphics of the newer consoles and of course PC. It's fun to think how Atlus decides on what to add to consider a game is prime for a re-release. And so far, we managed to crack their formula. Introduce a new character, preferably a girl, add a new final mission story quest, do some quality of life changes, pair it with new costumes, and we got ourselves up a new game that is totally different from this one that you played 2 years ago. And by now, you can see the downside of this practice. Atlus' reputation among gamers will be known as a company that re-released their games. So why should I even buy this new game from them if they're just going to sell it again in 2 years? Now, I obviously don't want that to happen, since if you can tell by now, I'm a big fan of Atlus games. So is there a way for Atlus to change this mindset? Can they try and convince that Persona 3 Reload or Metaphor ReFantazio will be a game with no re-release version? Yes, and they are now doing that very effort with P3R. But again, some fans aren't happy with it. Making expansion pass and DLCs are their way to tell people that, hey, we won't be re-releasing games again, so buy this expansion pass for $35 instead. Re-releasing games isn't practiced solely by Atlus, as other companies have also done this. One of the biggest culprits is Creatures Inc., known for their famous game, Pokemon, where there's always a third version that is considered as the definitive edition of that generation. But Pokemon stopped doing this beginning with Sword and Shield. Instead of releasing the meme Pokemon gun, they instead released an expansion pass, which totally works since they did the same thing with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. They also updated these games, such as changing some quality of life, bettering the graphics, among other things. So Atlus saw this and decided that this is the path that they need to follow now. Instead of re-releasing games, we can also just update our games and then add a DLC or an expansion. It's not like this is a new thing for them either, since historically speaking, the answer for Persona 3 is known as Episode Aegis in Japan, and that was sold as a DLC. It's so much better to just buy an expansion pass worth $30 to $40 than buying what is basically the same game with some new upgrades for $70. With this, I have my hopes up that Shin Megami Tensei 5 is Atlus' last hurrah for a re-release just to cap off their 35th anniversary. Atlus' biggest problem with re-releasing games is about convincing people that they are done with it by selling an expansion pass, while also their new game is a re-release, and hoping that people won't think that Metaphor, their upcoming game, will have the same treatment. But hey, it's a new era for gaming and I hope Persona 6 won't have a similar case. Speaking of which, I have a theory on how Persona 6 characters will summon their persona. Check this video out. Like and subscribe to Otaku Defined for more Atlus content. This is Math, and stay awesome my dudes.